Welcome back everybody to another video on the evX channel. My name is Mickey, and today we're talking once again about the Inmotion V12. This is one of the many videos that I've created on the V12. So there's a whole playlist on my channel here, so if you're looking for more content after this, there's plenty of it to go around, so go check that out. But today specifically we're going to be talking about the customization of the V12. I'm calling it the customization king. So today I'm going to dive deep on what there is to know about the customization on the V12, so hopefully you'll be set up when it arrives at your doorstep.
Coming alive. Whoa. Now is the time. Whoa. Don't try to hide. 'Cause I'm gonna harm you like an animal.
This video is sponsored by eWheels.com here in North America and eRides.com in the UK. So depending on your respective country, I've got links down below for you to purchase. I know that if you use those links, it'll help me immensely and help my channel grow. So if you want to support the channel, definitely use those links. But either way, two great dealers you can make a purchase with. So the first thing we should talk about is the obvious, which is the drone noise that it makes when you ride it. So a lot of people, I think on the internet so far, are loving this. I think a lot of people aren't. So I think it's maybe 60-40 people who love this idea of the noise. But the best part is you can turn it off. It is a pumped noise that is corresponding with the RPMs. So if you haven't heard it, I'll play it right here so you can hear it. Yeah, so that's that noise. So every time you speed up and slow down, that noise is tied to your RPMs and it kind of makes that drone sound. For me personally, I love it. It sounds kind of like an alien sound, and there's a bit of safety to it because people can actually hear you coming. But if it's not your thing, you can go into the app and you can turn it off. Also, it should be said that on the screen, you can turn it off as well. But inside the app on your phone, you can also crank the slider to be 0 to 100. So you can do, essentially the most responsiveness would be at 100 and like the most least responsive. I think it's probably just like, maybe even quieter as well, would be like 1% or something like that. So there's a lot of customization even within this one thing. It's not just on or off. You have levels of responding. So let's move on to the next thing down on the screen here, and that is the speedometer. It is right there, really big for you to see. Mine actually right now is in kilometers, so all of you Americans, I apologize. But I am told they will have Imperial by the time this launches, so there you go. Or you can all just dive into the metric system and then make everybody else happy. But for now, we have this big number here so you can see your speed, which is really actually quite usable. When you look down while you're riding, you can actually see and figure out exactly how fast you're going. And then going down from there, you can see there's on the left and right, there's two other options there. The nice part about this is right now it's set to maximum speed and it's also set to battery voltage. The benefit to that is if you press and hold like this, you can see that you have a plethora of options and can be assigned to each of these. So I think it's the exact same options for the left and the right. So right here on my left where I had the maximum speed set, I can pick one of these other options. And then if I go over to the right one where I have the battery voltage, press and hold, then you can see that I have other options. So whatever you like, however you want to customize it, it's there for you. And below that, you'll see the battery percentage, which I find to be kind of okay. It's off a little bit, I think. So I wouldn't rely on a percentage. And then below that, you have obviously the battery bar, and that too is kind of like useless. I think all of us should just learn to read voltage and understand how much battery is left. So if you swipe right here and you go over to this left screen, you'll see there is a cute little icon of the V12, which I think you'll be able to put your photo in. I don't know that you'd need to do that, but that's there, so that's a thing. And then below that, you have some other readouts there. So you have your max speed, average speed, board temp, average power, single mileage, total mileage. So there's a lot more of the nitty gritty about your wheel right here on top. And if you press and hold that little cute icon, then you get even more metrics. You can see you've got your motor temp, remaining battery, IMU temp, CPU temp, board temp, I think it's a MOSFET temp potentially. I don't know what MOS is, but there's, again, way more. So if you're that guy or gal who's super into knowing all that stuff, it's all right there for you on top of the wheel. So if you go up here to this little gear icon and you click that, so you actually have to press and hold here. It is a bit finicky because it is like the top corner. I feel like the screen itself works pretty well, all things considered. It's sort of like a budget Android, if you will. But at the top corners, like at the extents, is where it gets a little less exciting as far as like responsiveness. So just press and hold that, it'll light up yellow, and then you can pop into the next menu that pops up. And the first thing you're gonna see is max speed. So obviously if you are someone looking to go super fast, crank that sucker all the way to the right. Now, if you're looking to limit it, maybe you're letting somebody ride it for the first time and try it out, you don't want them to kill themselves, or maybe you yourself just want to limit your top speed, it's all right there. And then of course you can set your speed alarms according to that. So the sliders are right there. You can slide these guys back and forth and set it, and it'll make a little beep sound, and you'll know that you've messed with it. So below that we have the ride modes. So Inmotion's ride modes are a bit different, and this is where it gets really interesting for the V12. I mean, the V11 had similar things, but the V12 has a lot more to offer. So we've got basically two ride modes. We have off-road and commuting. So the big differences are the off-road mode is more of like a one-to-one experience. So a lot of those off-road guys, a lot of those technical riders, especially people like my buddy Law over there in Las Vegas, they want whatever is put in to come back out. So just a really tactile one-for-one experience. So if you have off-road mode, that's what you're gonna get. So the max acceleration and max braking, just at the hardest possible right there. Commuting mode is more like their soft mode. It's a bit, I would say, somewhere between a soft and a medium mode. It's not quite medium, it's not quite really soft, but the benefit is if you want that experience, you have it there and you can dial that in even further. Let's say you like off-road mode for the power draw and the responsiveness, but maybe it's a little bit too rough for you. You want to just dial it back a little bit. You can do that because we have what is down here below that. You'll see the pedal sensitivity. Now this is a 0 to 100 bar that allows you to change where you want this to be set. So if you're just trying to soften up your hard riding mode a little bit, which is their off-road mode, then you can take this slider and crank it down a little bit and see what works for you. For me, I find that increments of like 30% sort of make the larger differences, but you really can dial it in to the nth degree, so you should play with it and see what's best for you. So on the other side of that, since the commuting mode is a bit softer, if you then dial in the pedal sensitivity to be even softer than that, then it gets a little interesting. So some of these guys in New York City who love the super soft mode, this is where you're gonna be able to dial that in. Word of caution, the way ride modes essentially work, just to dumb it down, is it basically makes your motor think it's weaker than it is, so it allows for this shake. There's way more to it than that, but just so you know, like, you wouldn't want to make it ultra soft and then try to hang off the front like it's Shamu, like a hard mode on like a Gotway or something. That would be a detrimental. You could probably break the wheel at that point. So be careful and experiment and just see what's best for you. I want to talk about their new sliders they have. So this is no longer on the top of the wheel. This is in-app only. Now I've asked them to make it moved down to the wheel itself, but we'll see what happens. A lot can change in firmware by the time stuff gets in your hands, and every iteration they change the firmware, and that's kind of the nice part about Inmotion. But let's talk about these sensitivity sliders. So this is pretty revolutionary. This came out of me begging them to make the braking more responsive and to stop quicker. I don't think it quite accomplished that, but they did give us something so interesting, which I actually would like to rebrand. So Inmotion, if you're watching, you should rename this split ride modes. So essentially, it can take a ride mode and split it in half between acceleration and braking. So for example, let's say you're somebody who wants to hang off the front when you take off. Maybe you do a bit of that Michael Jackson lean and you need that hard response. You can set it to be just a regular, say, off-road mode, and set these sliders to be at 0 for your acceleration, so you get that hard response. And then you can take the braking and set it to a negative number, and that's gonna give you a softer brake. So if you're looking for that immediate takeoff, but then you maybe just want a bit more of a cradling on the back end when you're braking, this is where this kind of revolutionary system comes into play. So I love the fact that you can really dial this in as well. You have a weirdly like negative 100 to 0 and then 0 to a positive 100 that you can mess with. So this, I think, is going to be a lot of experimenting. And at the end of this video, I'm going to share my ride settings with you. So if you want to copy what I've got going on, you can have that as well. But I think this is the crazy part that's going to allow every person. I think in the future, once a lot of people have these, we'll all be sharing our ride settings online, on the forums and Facebook and things like that, and just testing things out to see like, oh, what are you doing? How are you getting this kind of response? So now on the other side of that, you can just do both. So you could do a negative as in softer version of braking and softer version of acceleration. But at that point, this is where I feel like this cool function becomes a bit redundant. So the pedal sensitivity, like we talked about earlier, that is adjusting both acceleration and braking. So if you were to, I think, drop this down, say 30%, negative 30% on acceleration and braking, to me, it feels like you're kind of just mimicking what the pedal sensitivity sliders do. But you'll have to play with it and see what works best for you. But I think there is a point at which it does become a little redundant. So my advice is this: put it in off-road mode, put the pedal sensitivity to 100%, and then mess with these sliders, these split ride mode sliders, as I'm now calling it, and see what works. And then if, say, you're like, oh, this is super close, but not quite what I want, maybe it's not quite soft enough in the right kind of way, then maybe I would drop your pedal sensitivity down a little bit, test that, play with that. If that's still like too hard, maybe swap over to commuting mode and then keep everything else the same and see how that feels. So you can see how you can go really cool with it in all directions. I think that's enough on that. Let me know what you guys are doing down below. Let me know the settings once you get your V12s, what you're gonna be setting it all to, and we'll share these online. Next is the ambient light. So that is actually just the RGB lights on the side. Not really sure why they didn't just call it the RGB lights, but there's a few functions with this. Personally, I've been really digging the sort of like speed function. So you can, as you see, turn it on and off right here. And then under ambient light mode, click that. It'll bring you to a new screen where you can pick speed mode, music mode, DIY. It's all right here. So this is what gets interesting. For someone who just wants to have it go to the beat of your music and you're using the internal speakers, put it on music mode and it'll do that. It'll look like a little equalizer like back in the day with Windows Media Player. Any of you who are old enough who remember that, it'll kind of look like that. But if you want to do the speed mode like me, it just moves and rotates kind of, I guess, to the speed at which you're going. So the faster you go, the faster it's going to rotate. Similar to what the Gateway Nikola does, but I will say on the whole, these RGB lights aren't as bright as the ones in the Nikola, at least through the plastic they're using. Maybe they'll upgrade that, I don't know. But anyways, moving on, we have the DIY part. And the DIY thing is kind of interesting. So you can actually, and this is where you have to pop back to the app, you can actually customize each single diode of the LED and really pick what color you want from like a whole color wheel. So that's super cool, but basically you set a profile in the app. So I guess it auto updates when you connect your phone to the EUC. And then you have basically a numbered system like you can see here. I've got like 0, 01, 02. I've got all these different things here. I've just tried, I've messed with a couple here. You can kind of see ones I've played with. So once you've created a profile, it'll then load into the machine and then you can select that there. So now you have a volume slider. So this is basically the volume of the wheel itself. So your startup noise and the, I guess, end noise or off noise. The next thing down you'll see is the spin kill button. That's obvious. You can turn on or off the, I used to call it the lift sensor. I guess it's, you know, that's what they call it, the spin kill. So the button underneath the handle, that's the spin kill. So actually when you first get your wheel, you should scroll down a little bit to the transport mode button, click that off because you're no longer in transport mode. That will allow it to start bouncing on its own. You might have to actually do that in the app potentially and not on here, but that's what that is right down there. Once that's settled, you can do like a vehicle calibration, and then from there on, basically you have that balance. And once you're calibrated, that 0 degrees will be straight up and down, you know, perfectly centered. That way, if you're someone who wants to tilt the wheel ever so slightly forward or backwards, you have varying degrees. I think it's like 1 to 5 and then -1 to -5. So it's all right there to really dial that in. So overall, 95% of all the functionality of this wheel can be messed with and adjusted right here on this screen. The other about 5%, you do have to jump back into the app, but no big deal because I think a lot of that you probably won't be messing with on the fly, so to speak. The other thing I want to say about the screen is in the rain, yeah, it kind of doesn't work. But you know what? Neither does my iPhone. So, you know, you get what you get. It's all basically the same, but I think the screen is a very welcome addition, and I'm very excited that we have this, and I just kind of love that you can use a glove. So you don't actually have to have bare fingers on this like an iPhone per se. You don't need an E-tip glove. You can use any glove and it works through pressure sensitivity. So that's really cool too. So let's move on to the lights here. As you can see here, it's clearly an iPhone 12 ripoff, which is kind of funny and cute all at the same time. But so we have 4 lights. So you have basically low beams, which are the lights at the top that are pointed downward. And then you have high beams, and that is the lights at the bottom pointing upward. And then you have both, I guess you would call it. So all of it on high and low at the same time. The last bit of customization, which is the thing I'm most excited about, I think it is the best feature on this electric unicycle, and that is the adjustable pedal hangers. A little bit of backstory, which I might have said before in other videos, is so myself and Inmotion and a couple of other riders who were testing this, we're going back and forth, like really hardcore about how high the pedals should be. A lot of the off-road people or more technical people would really enjoy and will enjoy the highest level of pedals possible. But I felt, man, if you're gonna be riding high speed, you're gonna need to lower that center of gravity as much as you can within reason. I mean, it is a bit of a top-heavy wheel by the design itself. If you want to see more about the design, I have another video in this playlist, the V12 playlist on my channel. You can go check that out. I go really in depth on the design here, but it is a bit top heavy, and so I felt like if we can just lower the pedals, it'll help you be more stable at high speed, and boy was I right. But there was a bit of an impasse where nobody could agree, and I just said to Inmotion, like, listen, can't we just have like both? Is there a way we can make everybody happy? Can we just have a way to adjust it somehow? I obviously was not suggesting creating two whole different pedal hangers. We've seen that with other wheels in the past, and that's very involved. But I was just like, listen, can you give us the ability to mess with it ourselves? Like, I don't want two different ones. I want one that can be adjusted. Lo and behold, a few weeks later, I get a little WeChat from Liam at Inmotion. Mickey, we now have adjustable pedal hangers. And I also go more in depth on that and what it looks like and how it functions in my other video, which is my Polo video, where we talk about the pedal hanger specifically. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that here because that is part of the whole customization of this wheel. So one other interesting feature they have inside this unicycle, which I don't really know if it falls in the customization category, but we'll fudge it, make it work, is effectively what you would call a black box. So if you know on an airplane, they have black boxes to record things when things go awry. There's one of those inside the control board here. So essentially about 3 seconds before a cutout and about 5 seconds after, if you've got a catastrophic failure, it's recording a lot of data so we can figure out what kind of happened. So when you upload a log later to them, we can really dissect what's gone on. Now, obviously, like as a user, I don't really have access to that, but if you know anything about the firmware on any Inmotion wheel, they do take logs, so you can upload that to them at any point, and they have the full rundown of what basically happened on your wheel. And specifically, this is useful when it cuts out, because obviously if the wheel is off, nothing's being recorded. But essentially, for a cutout scenario, they have a 3 second beforehand and about 5 seconds after to really get an idea of what's going on. So hopefully this gives you a more in-depth depiction on what you can do with this wheel, just how deep the customization goes. So if you're looking to buy the V12, I hope you got a lot of value out of it, or maybe you're thinking about it. Hopefully this helps you as well. But if you are somebody looking to purchase, once again, this video is sponsored by eWheels.com here in North America and eRides.com in the UK. So depending on your respective country, I've got links down below for you to purchase. I know that if you use those links, it'll help me immensely and help my channel grow. So if you want to support the channel, definitely use those links. But either way, two great dealers you can make a purchase with. So with that being said, I think that's enough on the subject. On to the next video. But for now, keep riding, never stop.